It's been 40 years, and the clock is still ticking on the Birmingham Pub Bombings. 21 people were murdered in 2 bars on one November night in 1974. The crime has never been solved.
This is an appeal that's really been in existence for 40 years. If anyone knows of information that would help us, then contact West Midlands Police and we will absolutely follow it up.
For the past 2 years, one victim's family has been doing its own investigation to find out why the killers have never been caught.
I don't know how long I'll be on this planet for, but I'll be fighting this till the day I die.
Brian and Julie Hambleton's sister, Maxine, was 18 when she died in the bombings.
Well, would somebody want to kill people like that? Or just kill people? We're out in a pub.
It's a notorious case that led to a grave miscarriage of justice and huge embarrassment for the West Midlands Police.
Justice! I don't think them people in there have got the intelligence, nor the honesty to spell the word, never mind dispense it. They're rotten!
Paddy Hill, one of 6 Irish men who were wrongly jailed for the bombings, is now backing the campaign for a new investigation.
The sooner we get the truth, then maybe for the living relatives of those who died and for those that were injured and are still alive, maybe then they may have some closure.
On the 40th anniversary, we begin a new chapter with this man. His brother was also killed in the bombings. As a policeman himself, Bill Craig always believed the West Midlands force did its best to catch the killers. We're going to find out what changed his mind.
You're the messenger. We're not going to shoot the messenger. Just tell them to come down here. Because listen, I'm not moving till this is sorted.
It's April 2014 and a big day for the Hambleton family. They're waiting to see the West Midlands Chief Constable, who they've asked for a new investigation into the bombings. This is where Bill Craig's story begins. But at the time, he kept away from the cameras.
Well, I was invited to the meeting with the Chief Constable on Monday the 7th of April at 10 o'clock. And I didn't want really any problems with the media at all. You know, I don't want to get into this.
This force has covered up this for 40 years and we're not standing for it anymore. I will block that doorway, I'm telling you.
The police didn't expect the family to bring lawyers, and the argument is about whether to let them in. It's taken a while to settle. But they're heading in to see the Chief Constable now, with Bill.
Well, as far as I remember, really, he said that it's now come to a close unless some credible evidence comes forward. Now, from that, I gather that he's not looking for the evidence, he's waiting for the evidence to come to him.
There was very clear disappointment that at the moment, with what we know, there are no obvious next steps in terms of re-energising and restarting an investigative process.
The decision is a huge letdown.
I really have to say I'm ashamed to be British today. I really am ashamed to be British. Our own judiciary has let us down in the most appalling and diabolical manner.
Bill's brother Jimmy was the last bomb victim to die, so he understands their pain. But as an ex-Birmingham policeman, he's never questioned the murder investigation. A meeting with police officials earlier this year has changed everything. It's left him thinking they know who murdered his brother.
He said, I can tell you, Bill, we know who committed the Birmingham pub bombings. There was 5 of them. 2 of them are dead, died some years ago. But you know what it's like, Bill, you were in the job. We have not got the evidence to put before the Crown Prosecution Service.
The allegation is denied. And in an interview for this programme in April, the Chief Constable made it clear the 5 men were only suspects and nothing more.
Looking at that group of 5 people, they were all to a varying extent part of the investigation in the mid-70s. They formed a part of the investigation in the early 90s and were therefore part of the file that went forward to the DPP.
But Bill is still unhappy, and that's why he's speaking out now. He thinks there's more to his brother's murder than he's been told. Police Police say nothing more can be done without new information. So Bill's going to look for some. The IRA has always been blamed for the bombs in Birmingham, and he needs to find someone with inside knowledge. The other side of this story is in Ireland, where there's controversy, because some ex-IRA men and women have been talking about the violence they were involved in. This man has heard their stories, and Bill wants to meet him.
You know, he might have some answers to what I want to know. And, I mean, I know it was 40 years ago, but I'd like to know as well how the people in this country felt about the Birmingham pub bombings, if they felt as bad as we did in Birmingham, because it devastated Birmingham.
In the quiet seaside town of Drogheda, 40 minutes from Dublin, the ex-policeman is doing something he would have never imagined. He's walking towards an ex-IRA man. Naturally, he's nervous.
Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. Hi, Bill. Hello, Mr. McIntyre, you all right?
Yep. Pleased to meet you.
And you. Great.
After spending half his life in prison for murder, Dr. Anthony McIntyre is now a journalist and historian. He's turned his back on violence and the IRA, but he's still a controversial figure because of the secrets he keeps.
I felt that because people would be coming to the end of their lives, people who were involved in the conflict, it would be a shame were their narratives to disappear, and the only narratives we were to have were the sanitised official version of events, which I always find tell us very, very little.
It was a social history project for Boston College in America. The interviews he recorded with ex-paramilitaries could tell us a lot about the Northern Ireland conflict. But will he tell Bill anything about the Birmingham bombings?
Is there anything on these tapes who committed the Birmingham pub bombings?
Well, because of the confidentiality of the tapes, I'm unable to confirm what is or what is not on them. It was a gathering of research material. It wasn't a gathering of information for the police, and this is what the police have tried to turn it into. So, and I know that causes you enormous frustration because you're in a position of not knowing what I might know. And I'm not trying to act as some sort of mystery man that might have some secret that I'm withholding from you. But if I did ever obtain knowledge through the Boston College tapes about the event in which your brother horrifically lost his life, I would be unable to tell you.
He's so protective about the tapes because police in Northern Ireland have seized some of them after overturning the project's confidentiality agreement in the courts. But it won't stop Bill from asking.
Well, you know, what we want really, as I say, is closure. We never, you know, in my opinion, we're not going to get justice, obviously. I mean, that's gone now, 40 years on.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that you have a right to know what happened to your brother. I think there are people who could help you. I don't think they will help you. I think you have a small window of opportunity for people to come forward. But there is going to be a major stick used by the government to beat them out of helping you, and that is the stick of the threat of prosecutions. People simply will not come forward. I mean, I have spoken to people over the years who I am convinced knew about the Birmingham bombings, and they have since died, and they will take those secrets to the grave with them.
So the tapes are off limits. We tried to find other IRA insiders to talk to us about Birmingham, but this is as close as we got. At least Bill can say he tried.
Well, perhaps he just can't tell me. Perhaps he can't tell me, because it'd be more trouble for him. I expected my answers in Birmingham, to be honest, not to come here.
Ireland didn't give Bill the answers he was looking for, so he's returning to the 1974 police investigation. West Midland's Serious Crime Squad detectives were in charge, and a lot has been written about them. Little of it complimentary.
From the cases we looked at, it was evident that there was a systemic problem, that there was a culture in the squad that they identified early on who they believed the criminal was. They went all out to incriminate that prime suspect. And if that meant crossing the legal line, it seems that that's what they did.
Law professor Andrew Sanders' report was for the human rights charity Civil Liberties. He examined scores of crime squad cases But this man says he has hands-on experience.
And all of a sudden a big shadow loomed over me. And I remember looking up, and this guy's there, and he bent over and he was rubbing his hands like this. And he went to me, "Soon, you little soon, you're mine."
On the night of the bombings, there was enormous pressure on the police to get results, and it appeared the squad had delivered. The bombed pubs were still smouldering when Paddy Hill and 5 other Irishmen were presented to the nation as ruthless IRA killers.
As a result of the inquiries that have been made, 6 people have been charged. These men will all appear tomorrow morning at the Birmingham Magistrates Court at 10 o'clock.
The next thing I knew, I was getting battered up and down the floor, and they just carried on like that for 3 days. They didn't care about anything. They told us that their orders were that they were to get confessions and convictions, and that they would use any means that they had to obtain them. And they were not to worry about themselves because they were covered all the way to the top. Nothing would ever happen to them. And that's exactly what happened.
The Birmingham Six protested their innocence from day one. After 3 appeals and 16 years in prison, they walked free in 1991. They were the victims now of one of Britain's worst miscarriages of justice.
The police told us from the start that they knew we hadn't done it. They told us they didn't care who'd done it. They told us that we were selected and that they were going to frame us.
As the Six would cheer to freedom, Professor Sanders was finishing his report. Inquiries into the bombings and the crime squad followed. But Bill has found many official documents won't be made public until 2068.
The obvious question has to be, what reason is there to hide the truth from the public and to hide the truth from the families of the victims of those terrible bombings? It's most unusual to hide the truth at all. It's particularly unusual to hide it for 75 years. If there's a good reason for having a 75-year embargo, the very least we and the very least those families can expect is to be told what the reason is.
Even the smartest lawyer would have a hard time arguing for secret files to be opened without knowing why they were closed in the first place. No one involved will be alive in 2068.
There must be some senior figures involved in this case who were involved in the 1970s and possibly the 1980s, where revealing the truth could be embarrassing to those senior figures.
Not surprisingly, old detectives from the squad aren't talking. Not even to a former policeman. And Bill has tried. None of this happened on his watch. But today's chief constable has been left to face the questions.
It has been an open wound, I think, ever since that time. So it's an enormous embarrassment to the force, regret to the force that we weren't able to produce an investigation that produced positive results.
For Bill, there have been more obstacles than answers. He's 68 now and still finds it painful to keep returning to his brother's murder. While memories of the bombings have faded from Birmingham's modern streets, his still haunt him.
Oh yeah, it all comes back, yeah. I mean, you never forget it. So that's how it is, really. I still feel uneasy when I'm in News Street, really.
That's because the 2 bombs were only yards from here. And to make matters worse, as a policeman, they were both on his beat. They didn't know each other, but both Jimmy Craig and Maxine Hambleton were caught up in the Tavern in the Town explosion. The mulberry bush at the foot of the rotunda was the other target. Just 10 minutes apart, both pubs were blown to pieces. 21 people died, and 182 were injured.
No, he was already ready. I got ready later on because I was only going to the local pub. He was 34, but he couldn't read or write. And sometime prior to that Thursday night, a letter came to our house, and he would only ask me or my mother to read to him. And on this occasion, he asked my mother to read the letter. And it was from a lady arranging to meet him in town that Thursday night.
Dear Jimmy.
Jimmy had dyslexia, and the letter his mother read to him was from a new girlfriend. She'd chosen the Tavern in the Town for their date. With two sisters as well as a big brother, Bill got home from his local pub to hear the news of the bombings. After a long night waiting for Jimmy to turn up, Bill set out to find him, searching the hospitals.
So I went across there and saw a senior nurse and asked her, you know, have you got a man in here about 34 with a beard? And she said, well, it's no good asking us that because some of them haven't got any faces. But as I walked away, they called me back and they said, yes, there is somebody in there, but we don't know who he is.
By now, it was the following afternoon. Jimmy was barely alive and on life support.
I visited the hospital twice a day for 3 weeks. And when I went on Monday, the 9th of December, the nurse said, the doctor wants to see you. And I saw the doctor, and the doctor said he's got no chance. And on the Monday night, my sister, who had a phone, she came into our house from Castle Bromwich, and he passed away about 6 o'clock on the evening of Monday the 9th of December. And that was it.
Bill found out later the girl in the letter survived. A lot of painful memories have returned since the police meeting in April. Something else the chief constable said that day is still troubling him. They can't find a lot of the evidence.
There were about 35 of the 168 exhibits used at the trial that were not available to the 1991 reinvestigation. And obviously that investigation attempted to find them but didn't. We have made further attempts to locate them but have not been able to.
Bill and the Hambletons want to know details of this missing evidence and if it could have helped police catch the bombers. So far, they only know about one key exhibit.
They've lost the bomb, which we have a picture of the contents there, which, you know, they deny.
This is the third bomb that is missing.
This is the third bomb.
A tangible piece of evidence that is missing, that would have had fingerprints on.
How on earth do you lose something as important as a bomb?
Well, the working assumption is that they were disposed of sometime in the late 1980s, probably sometime around the 10th anniversary of the trial, on the basis that the case had been completed. And again, that feels utterly at odds with current procedure, but was probably not as unusual at that time.
Bill was a policeman in the 1980s and knows the procedures. There doesn't appear to be any paperwork to show exactly when the third bomb was destroyed and who authorized it.
Well, at the beginning of this news, I mentioned that an area of the Hagley Road had been sealed off. That's about a mile from the city centre. Bob Sinkinson is on the telephone from there now. Bob, what's happening?
Well, Mark, to be precise...
You are listening to a live BBC radio report from the night.
Plough and Harrow Road and Norfolk Road.
Birmingham's emergency services were already stretched to the limit dealing with the two bomb explosions, and listeners were now hearing about a third bomb in the city.
I'm speaking to you from the Plough and Harrow Hotel, and the residents here have all been warned tonight that when
the terror plot wasn't complete, and we've asked an expert to help explain it.
The first device functioned at the Mulberry Bush about 11 minutes past 8, and the second device in the tavern in the town some 6 or 7 minutes later. This would have caused complete disruption to the city centre, and obviously all the casualties and injured being dealt with by the police and the emergency services. The third device, situated outside the Barclays Bank on the Hagley Road, would now, 2 hours later, cause massive disruption to the effect within the city.
The unexploded bomb was still ticking in the doorway of a bank on the city's Hagley Road when it was found by a member of the public. Bill's heading there now.
Probably the most important piece of evidence the West Midlands Police have ever had, and they have destroyed it with 34 other items. We don't know what the other 34 items were because he never told us that.
He hadn't even heard of the third bomb until April this year. But he's going to meet someone who will never forget it, because it nearly killed him.
I think it was an entrapment to kill either a police officer or the military, and I think it was the sting in the tail of the two bombs in the city centre.
Eric Francis thinks it was a booby trap. He was a detective inspector back then, not on the crime squad, but he got to the Hagley Road at a dramatic moment.
The inspector got out of the car and he walked over to the bomb. He took his truncheon out and started poking, pushing at this haversack that was in the doorway, when there was a terrific explosion, like a shotgun going off, really loud. Well, he dropped the truncheon and ran back towards us.
The two policemen were lucky. Only the detonator triggered, and not the bag full of high explosives. The crime squad now had an intact piece of evidence, but they had little time for it. A team was closing in on 5 Irish suspects who had caught a train north out of Birmingham New Street.
They thought, 5 Irishmen, there's the bomb's gone off. These are the men that's done it. They just assumed that they were the bombers. And they put all their eggs in one old basket. And of course, he didn't want to know about the bomb at Hagley Road because, well, it didn't fit in, did it?
Bales got closer to the night of his brother's murder thanks to Eric. So what does he think now?
Well, I think the supervision really should have took more notice of Eric, to be honest, where they discarded this third bomb. It appears that because 5 men got on the train at New Street Station at roughly 10 to 8, everything was put on that.
Paddy Hill has become an unlikely ally for the Hambletons. They haven't been allowed to see the police evidence, so he's been going through his own files. He's found one about the bombs.
And you see, when you look at all this bran and all the stuff that they found in the canal and everything,
Yeah.
don't tell me they didn't get fingerprints off this. We need to know the truth.
Yeah.
Yet these people seem to think they can tell us what they want us to know and nothing else.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to accept that.
Yeah.
They've been working together since we introduced them for the first time last year. For Brian, information about his sister Maxine's murder is everything.
Paddy Hill supplied us with information which we could only dream about. We never thought we was ever going to be handed any information from that particular source. It should be the police that's helping us.
And Paddy has his own theory about why things have gone missing.
The last thing they want to do was to arrest anybody after us, because if they had it done, what the hell are they going to do about us? How are they going to explain us away?
Paddy's file contains a photo of the bomb that didn't go off, and the paperwork that went with it. Bill wants to know how important it could have been, so we found an expert eye to cast over it.
Well, my name is Warren Melia. I spent 24 years in the British Army, where I was an ammunition technician, managing 38 bomb disposal teams in the United Kingdom. So my background is very much looking at terrorism, and in particular, improvised explosive devices.
Using his experience, he's piecing together the bombers' plan. By 1974, the Northern Ireland conflict had reached a bloody new phase. Republicans were fiercely opposed to British rule, and some were planting bombs at home and on the mainland. Birmingham was a big target.
The bombing campaign that had been going on all year, where economic targets had really failed to engage the public the way they wanted, this was a game change. This was changing their tactics now to kill young people, to kill people in their normal, to create the horror, the terror.
These days, Warren advises firefighters about modern terror threats. For him, the Birmingham Pub Bombings is still a textbook case. Bill's keen to know what he thinks the third device could have told us about the bombers.
The remainder of the device components, could potentially be covered with lots of biometric evidence, such as fingerprints and DNA. That could help to identify the bomb maker, the bomb emplacers, and maybe even the people, supporting those two individuals buying the components and the sourcing of that, even down to tool marks. All of this would have helped an investigation to pin down the network behind that particular device.
But that would rely on it being properly preserved by modern forensic standards. The Chief Constable says they've had to focus on evidence they have, rather than speculate about what's missing.
What's come back from that process are serious issues about the way the material was collected, stored, the continuity of it. We're talking about a period that's pre-DNA, pre-biological science, really, and that, you know, this was examined for fingerprints and examined for explosive trace, but there was little other obvious forensic leads available at that time, and no one envisaged that DNA would provide the opportunities that it routinely does today.
Our expert has never seen this material before, and already something has caught his eye, something new.
We can see the timer and the clock face, and it appears to be using the hour hand, which would give a 12-hour delay, and this black mark possibly indicating the fact that the timer was set to function between 10 and 11 p.m. that evening. Looking at the hull, we can also see a duplication of components. Here appears to be the remains of another timer, two similar size amounts of franjecks, the remains of two batteries, and possibly the remains of two detonators.
Warren is sure the missing Hagley Road bomb was in fact two devices. And he's found another surprise in the police report. It looks like the pub bombs were also doubled up. Another page reveals the full extent of the terror plot. There were 7 devices on the ground in Birmingham that night. Bill and the Hambletons will want to hear this.
The more evidence comes to light, the more facts you can start to pull together. It's not a complete jigsaw by any stage at this point, but it's looking clearer that there were 7 devices, that they were probably or possibly 2 devices in each of the 3 locations, and that the last device being recovered from the canal.
So there were 2 bombs on the Hagley Road. Another 2 in each pub makes 6. The 7th single device was dumped in a canal on the same night.
They've not only lost one bomb that we know of, they've lost 2 bombs now that we know of. I mean, it's sheer and utter incompetence.
It could well be that they were doubling up with like a belt and braces. So set both bombs going, and if one fails, the other one still functions. Another theory may well be that, you know, with what had gone on in the town, this was just them getting rid of extra bombs and not wanting to go any further.
It's only a theory, but could it mean the bombers planned to attack another bar full of people? The 3rd device was found opposite a hotel. Bill walked past it to meet Eric the other night.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously that would have been horrendous, wouldn't it? If they'd have put it in the Plough and Arrow, which is very near to there. It's only across the road, isn't it? You know, it's awful, awful. But what gets me is the West Midlands police want to sweep it under the carpet, to be honest. They've not investigated it, and it's wrong.
We put our findings to the Chief Constable, but he declined to add anything new to the interview he gave us in April.
I've been personally involved with the assessment work, that it's been thorough and open, and no information is being covered up, for the reason that if we were able to progress it, I would dearly love to progress it.
Mr. Sims insists there is no cover-up or pressure from above, but this former policeman still needs convincing.
Well, I was in the police force, and the idea is to investigate the crime, to go out and look for the evidence. So what we need is somebody, whoever it is, to take them on, because the answers are there.
And you can hear more about Bill and Jimmy Craig's story on BBC WM tomorrow morning from 6 a.m.